And so the first stage was, how do we build out true demand planning? So how do I give the same level of attention to, we had about 50 products in our SKU count. So how do I give the same level of attention to every single product? So the first thing I did was really mapped out what operationally needs to happen for us to make sure that we can optimize every one of our listings, and we can create enhanced brand content, and we can drive external traffic, and we can do all the things that are really needed. So planning was the first step. So I spent a lot of time understanding what's the magnitude, what's the resource allocation required. And then I went off and I started to build the teams that could deliver the same level of attention to every single listing and make hard decisions. So we started to build KPIs and metrics against each of the different performers. And we would give them a certain period of time to say, is this really inside of our brand portfolio? Does this make sense for us to keep?
Hello and welcome to the eCommerce podcast. We believe that there is more than enough content focused on e-commerce marketing and not enough content celebrating the real heroes of e-commerce, those running the operation. Each week, we find and interview an e-commerce operations expert to share the secrets behind how some of this industry's most exciting businesses are run. I'm your host, Norbert Strappler, the CEO of SyncSpider.
Hello and welcome to another eCommerce podcast. Today I'm talking to Yoni Kozminski from Escala and MultiplyMii. This is really great because Escala is a premium business consultation service for Amazon, e-commerce and agencies that seriously are considering scaling the business to new heights. And MultiplyMii helps you to offshore staffing and enhance your businesses. Looking to win new great resources that help you grow your business. Welcome, Yoni. Great to meet you.
Norbert, great to meet you, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely happy to have you on board. Yoni, tell me a bit about yourself. How did you get into e-commerce?
Sure. So my journey started many years ago. I grew up in the age of when social media wasn't a thing. So my first foray into digital, let's say, was back in about 2009, where I launched Mercedes-Benz Australia, New Zealand's social assets. So there was no Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Pinterest for brands back then. And so I grew up in that stage. So everything from web development to design to SEO, I was building e-commerce websites as early as probably 2012 in the agencies that I'd worked for and sort of grown up in. And fast forward, probably close to 10 years, I found my way into an Amazon business about 2 or 3 years ago, where a little longer now, probably maybe 4 or 5 years ago, where it was doing $2 million in revenue. I came on as I wasn't a co-founder, but I was a director of the business and managed to scale it from 2 to 5 million in 12 months. And
wow, that's great.
Yeah, so that was really my first step into, let's say, the Amazon world. E-commerce, significantly more time inside of that. And it's changed a lot. The landscape has changed a lot over the last 5-10 years, but in particular, I'd say over the last sort of 3 or 4 years, huge shift toward online. So that was my step into it.
Mm-hmm. Wow. And what was the impetus behind founding MultiplyMii and Escala?
So inside of that experience, inside of that Amazon business that was ultimately acquired by Thrasio, I understood that for a lot of e-commerce sellers, they were looking at it as Amazon. They were Amazon store owners, not business owners. So how do we effectively recreate what we did inside of that Amazon business that enabled it to scale from 2 to 5 million in 12 months? We actually had built a team in the Philippines. So, I managed to build a high functioning team. So from ops managers to supply chain specialists and inventory and logistics specialists, all the way through to creative directors and designers and web developers and a whole customer support function. We built out a whole team, highly efficient at a low cost, obviously, given that the cost of living there is about 50 to 80% less, depending on whether it's regional or, inside of Manila will dictate sort of what the cost of living is, but really understood that you could find incredible talent some of the best talent, I would argue, that I've worked with in my life over in the Philippines, and at a fraction of the price. So that was the impetus, was how do we then provide this solution to other e-commerce sellers so that they can truly scale their business? And that was the step into it. And I'm just going to go ahead and tell you the other business, Escala, was started very shortly after, where what ultimately happened was I came across a number of management consultants who were ex-Ernst & Young in the Philippines that came from a process improvement background, initially engaged them to build out our process improvement function and effectively help take what we did inside of that Amazon business, but on steroids, because it is from a big four management consulting practice. And then we effectively rolled that into another business as well. So that was it. Like, if you look at the premise, what's the impetus? It's how do we help professionalize the e-commerce space so that they can compete with big box sellers?
Awesome. This is really great and very interesting. I think there is a high demand for finding qualified, high qualified stuff, and the world gives us the opportunity now to offshore, to work with offshore and people that are not living in the same location where you are. This is really a great opportunity. Well, I'm very interested in, you told me that you scaled the Amazon business from 2 million to 5 million in 12 months. This is really insane number. How did you do that? What was the key driver?
A few key drivers. I think like if you're at 2 million right now, or 1 million, or 500,000, or 3 million, I think the first stage is mindset. So a lot of people, when they get to those stages, in particularly Amazon, but I'd say in general in e-commerce, they've built a great brand or a great product, and they're focused on, how do I improve my PPC? How do I optimize my listing? How do I identify new products, which usually gets pushed toward the background. And ultimately, usually 1, 2, 3, maybe 5 products rise to the top, and you might have a 50 SKU count, 100 SKU count, and all the attention gets focused in on those products that are performing. That's, the typical, I'm talking about the typical Amazon or e-commerce or marketplace business owner. And so the first stage was, how do we build out true demand planning? So how do I give the same level of attention to, we had about 50 products in our SKU count. So how do I give the same level of attention to every single product? So the first thing I did was really mapped out what operationally needs to happen for us to make sure that we can optimize every one of our listings, and we can create enhanced brand content, and we can drive external traffic, and we can do all the things that are really needed. So planning was the first step. So I spent a lot of time understanding what's the magnitude, what's the resource allocation required. And then I went off and I started to build the teams that could deliver the same level of attention to every single listing and make hard decisions. So we started to build KPIs and metrics against each of the different performers. And we would give them a certain period of time to say, is this really inside of our brand portfolio? Does this make sense for us to keep, giving this same level of attention to, say, a product that's doing $1 million a year versus one that's doing $20,000 a year, for example. Mm-hmm. So that was sort of the baseline. On the back of that, building out the resources to actually, give the right amount of attention to each one of these resources. So we started hiring. We started hiring managers to build out functions inside of the team. And obviously, knowing what I said before, the cost of living is significantly less in the Philippines. And so as a result, like a lot of e-commerce businesses, we were generating a lot of revenue. We were growing quickly, and it was a very profitable product too. So we could reinvest all of the money into building teams so that it would buy us more time, more focus, and allowed us to streamline our product development roadmap, which also became a key focus. How do we keep creating more winning products? So that was another aspect of it. But honestly, like to break it down really simply, we put the time in to plan. We stopped trying to have the team be generalists. Like, I'm not a finance guy. I'm not great at supply chain and inventory planning. These aren't my skill sets. So we brought in professionals where they'd had 10, 15, 20 years experience, and these guys were the top of their game. And so we brought in professional resources just to throw out a few things as to what we were able to achieve.
And this is not your job, actually. So you were a scaling expert. and you're known as a scaling expert. What is a common mistake that people in e-commerce make when it comes to scaling the business?
Yeah, common mistakes would be like the founders that I came into that business was that they can handle absolutely everything. So if you want to truly scale a business, you have to be comfortable with a certain degree of handing things off and understanding that not everything is going to be exactly as you would do it. But I would also argue that you're not going to be able to do everything the best. So I'll give you a prime example. The founder of the business was trying to do image creation on Canva and also trying to do PPC management and also inventory planning. Now, most people are not both left and right brain. It's very rare that you find people who are both creative and very numbers focused. So common mistake, don't try and handle everything yourself, right? There's critical decisions that you need to make as a business owner or as the person driving the shift, so to speak. Make good decisions on what things need to be used specifically versus things that you can delegate out. And I would say another critical mistake is a lack of planning. For a lot of business owners, they have when we talk about e-commerce here, they have a great product idea. A lot of these entrepreneurs are great innovators when it comes to product ideas. Focus on the areas where you have the most intrinsic value creation in your business and delegate the rest. And then I'd say another key mistake is not, what gets measured gets managed. And so for a lot of people, they're simply, they're looking at the revenue. They're focusing on vanity metrics like revenue, whereas they should be looking at, well, what's the profitability of these product lines? How do I get all of the information I need to make high-level decisions rather than getting into the weeds of every single thing? For you as the business owner, your objective is how do I empower my, hopefully, team to deliver? How do I give them all the tools and resources they need so that they can then give you the information needed to make the right decisions? So there's a few common mistakes I would say people make.
Yeah, fully agree. Absolutely. Your companies, MultiplyMii and Escala, provide different solutions aimed taking the e-commerce and Amazon businesses to the next level. Talk to me a bit about the approaches. Why are both types of solutions important, and what's the difference actually?
For sure, I'll give you sort of the short of it was that honestly the market wasn't ready for a company like Escala. So Escala is a process improvement consultancy, much like EY, functions of EY, Bain, BCG, Accenture, Deloitte. They have and effectively work with large corporates to do the same sort of work, not specifically in e-commerce. And what we wanted to do is we wanted to democratize the ability to deliver consulting solutions for businesses that couldn't afford to fork out $1 million, $5 million plus in, it's not realistic for an e-commerce owner. So because we leverage the geolocation-based arbitrage out of the Philippines and we leverage the same talent pool that they do. So most of our consultants come from EY, for example, or Accenture or Deloitte or any one of the other big consulting firms. So we built a business in Escala that the market wasn't exactly ready for, whereas MultiplyMii, very, very known, offshore, outsourced, it's been around for a long time. So to go back, what does each business do? MultiplyMii is executive search and HR function into the Philippines. So we help find the best talent, high-level talent in the Philippines, and we also help integrate it. So we handle things like healthcare, payroll, social security, HMO, PhilHealth, 13 months, the things that are a little bit, let's call it messy to handle if you don't know what you're doing. These are the things that help attract better talent, but people don't really know how to do. And it took obviously a bit of time to figure out how does this all work over in the Philippines. So when you're looking to scale and you want to find talent, MultiplyMii really serves as a guide of, well, who do I actually need and at what time and what's the right first, second, 50th, 150th hire? What does that actually look like? That's MultiplyMii. Escala, on the other hand, will look and effectively, so that's like an ongoing, full-time, dedicated resource into a business. We hire full-time talent into companies. And so if you're ready to hire talent, that's where you'd go to. You go to MultiplyMii and we'll help guide you through and find better talent than you would find on onlinejobs.ph, for example, which I like to call the gateway drug to the Philippines, where you can kind of find talent that's just good enough to do baseline tasks, but it's not the high-level professionals that I'm talking about here.
Yeah.
Escala, on the other hand, is like a project-based management consulting. And this is really for people who I would say are a little bit more established or more serious about where they want to take their business, because that's a lot more involved. So we deploy management consultants into your business. We interview, shadow, and review all the key stakeholders to really build the framework as to like what is the high-level process that's going on in the business. We all have them. Whether they're documented or they're not is really dependent on the business, and most are not. So what we do is we actually document the process as how the team sees it functioning. And then what we'll do is we'll build the future state. So we'll build the org strategy and structure. Who do you need? When do you need them? And what are the triggers over the coming 2 and 3 and 4 years, for example, as you scale your business? You know, what are the most effective ways to build scalable solutions inside of the business? So when we're building out the SOPs, the training videos, the documentation, we're building it so that there's no wastage here. You know, I'll give you an example. If you're an e-commerce business and you have a marketplace team and you have a D2C team, you might have different designers working on the same products. For example, where maybe centralizing that makes more sense. I'm just throwing sort of a blanket statement here. Rather than doubling up on resource, how do you maximize your resources today so that you can scale? And when I use the word scale, it's not about growing revenue, because what we really want to do is we want to grow profitability. And the only way we do that is by creating efficiencies through economies of scale. So really looking at the business holistically and understanding how can we squeeze every bit of juice out of the talent pool that we have without overworking them, and understanding what those trigger clauses are to building it to the next layer and the next layer and the next layer.
Yeah, that's a cool approach. Now, the Amazon marketplace especially is saturated, making it difficult for companies to make a name for themselves. What are your tips for standing out?
So I would say the tips for standing out is we've gone through. It's a bigger question. It's a big question.
It's a big question. Yeah.
So I mean, just to take it a step back, right? I would say historically, let's say up until 2017, 2018, it was very easy to, and especially 2016, 15, 14, very, very easy to simply go into AliExpress or Alibaba, do a bit of keyword research on Amazon, understand what people were buying, and then simply just jump on and start to sell a product. And before you knew it, sales were coming, you'd build a nice little review moat and you had a great product. Today, the game has changed drastically. So there's no more of just jumping on and making slight changes in a product and going through this process and negotiating down, what it's going to cost to actually source them. You really need to invest in building a brand. And when I talk about the term brand, it's not just you're building a product that actually has, think about the customer profile of the avatar. Who are they? What are they going to be purchasing? How can I really, truly, deeply resonate with them as, on the human level? So everything from design to product quality to the subset of products that I'm trying to build. I want someone to look at my product, and it might even be slightly more expensive, but I want them to feel a connection with the brand, because you're not going to win racing to the bottom, because there's always going to be, especially now, there's always going to be a Chinese supplier that manufactures direct in the source and is going to be able to beat you on price. So what you really need to focus on are things that are going to set you apart as a brand. And that might be the catalog of products that make sense for your audience. It might be the actual experience. I mean, every little detail, and taking Apple as a great example, when Apple produces a product every single year, they release a new iMac, MacBook, iPhone, whatever it is that they're bringing out. They think of every single aspect of the experience, from the touch, the feel, the look, the media, the creative, the boxing, the packaging experience. I mean, not one stone is left unturned for them to really create an affinity. And I'm a massive Apple fanboy and have been for many years. And as a result, they've won me over. I know it's a more expensive product. I know that Intel probably builds a better chip, now that they've built the M1 chip. Let's see what happens there. But the point I'm making is that I'm well aware that the power in some of these machines, probably at half the price, are likely better. But I'm committed to the brand that is Apple, and I love the the operating system, the OS of Mac, and I'm committed to it. So that's really the affinity that you want to create, is that of a brand.
Yeah, and I need to agree. And it's not only Apple; it's actually every single brand that. Yeah, let's talk about energy drinks. So there is only actually one energy drink, and it's Red Bull. Yeah, absolutely. And there is only one Coke. Okay, in the US it's also Pepsi, but actually it's Coca-Cola. Yeah, and I think it's really the brand and the brand experience and every single aspect they are doing on building out that brand and that philosophy behind the brand and everything they are doing that are influencing the brand and the behavior. It's not inventing a new product or copying a product. It's really being the product, being a corporate tongue, a corporate language, a design, and every aspect around the product that brings you forward. I think this is very, very important. A lot of planning and strategy goes into scaling an e-commerce business. Can you break down your process of building out a long-term directive plan and strategy?
Yeah, wow, that's another big question here that you're hitting me with.
Yeah, we have time. It's recorded.
Yeah. So, again, I think it all starts, like you said, with planning. So when we talk about scaling a business, it's taking a stock take for, depending on the stage you're at, right? If it's a brand new business, it's a different experience. If you have a product in market today or you're building a brand, it's very different. But the first thing is understanding, what is my current state of play? So everything from the financials to the processes to the personnel to the future roadmap, I'm building out and understand, like I have right now, all of our current state SOPs. What happens at every stage of our business, from, a new client or a prospective client discovers us as a business, all the way through to what the offboarding, if it didn't go to plan, what that offboarding experience looks like. We built every single aspect so that no one individual, including myself, and I would say if you're a business owner, the thing you should be focused on first is, how do I remove myself from the business, not how do I create myself as a key mover in it. No one's starting a business. Guarantee you, anyone listening here who has an Amazon or e-commerce store, you didn't start the business to work 180 hours a week inside of your business. That wasn't the objective. The objective was financial freedom, to do something that you're passionate about. And so if you take that mindset and you think back to, well, why did I actually start the business? It's to create more opportunities for myself and to have time focused on the things I love. So again, back to how do I scale an e-commerce business? So I'm building out the roadmap of what it looks like. I'm defining. So we, for example, internally, we just went through 4DX, four disciplines of strategy execution. So for us as a senior leadership team, we built our wildly important goal, our WIG, of what we want to achieve over the next 12 months in the business. And we built all of the lead measures across each department of what do we need to do in our accounts team, in our finance team, in our marketing team, in our sales team, in our, in our client services team, etc. Like every single department built out what were their wildly important goals to achieve the parent wildly important goal. And then what are the 3 lead measures that will actually get us there to move the needle? So we create strategic alignment across the entire business, and you can do this for any business, so that everyone understands that we're heading in the same path. So taking it back to e-commerce, how many products do I want to bring to market? Or if I'm really smart, what was the impact over the last 2 years of products that I've launched? How much revenue have they generated? What's the profitability attached to them? Well, logically speaking now, if I launch more products that are in this same area, and I have the buying audience and I understand how that maps, then it probably pays me to create 5 times as many products as I'm creating this year as it did last year. So reverse engineering what has worked to date. What do I need from an operational infrastructure to grow to the next level? And then what is my true goal? If you don't build out a directive, a guide, what you're trying to drive toward, then, you're not really driving into a single focused direction. And you can't really fail, right? Because you set no expectations. So, the reality is, like, everything's good because there was no expectations set. But when you start to set concrete goals and objectives and you understand, and everyone understands where that's headed, then it creates focus. And you'd be amazed at how much more productive your entire team is when they understand where they're driving towards. So that also comes into the aligned with KPIs, and performance management and reviews and understanding, am I hitting my targets? Am I hitting my goals? And it's not about wrapping anyone on the back of the hands and saying, you haven't delivered. It's even, your team members, they want to understand, am I doing a good job? Am I helping move the needle? Everyone's looking for that validation at every layer and every level of the business. So helping people understand what that looks like, it's a win-win.
Awesome. Now, you also host a podcast, Successful Sales. I love that. It's a really great name. Where you discuss challenges of now successful business owners, experience on the road and success. So you cover a lot of things. Do you have any favorite takeaway from one of your episodes or guests?
Yeah, great question. So just to give the listeners a bit of context, Successful Scales is all about speaking to people who have grown large businesses. So we have a team, we have over 200 people on payroll today, and we've been around for 2 years. And so about 9-10 months ago, I started recording, trying to help entrepreneurs miss all of all the things that I missed as I'm trying to scale this company. I couldn't learn fast enough. So I interview people who have grown really large companies and ask them the questions as to, what are some of the insights around marketing or sales or, org strategy and design? Like how are you building your companies? And the idea is really to help entrepreneurs not make the mistakes that I made throughout this journey. And so I'd say there's been a few really great episodes. I think off the top of my head, Cameron, COO Alliance, Cameron Herald, great episode. Mm-hmm. I can't off the top of my head name you all the insights that I took from it, but if you were to listen to, let's say, 2 or 3 episodes, I'd say that's one to listen to. Another one is with one of the co-founders of Thrasio. They're an aggregator that have raised $3.4 billion today. They were the fastest profitable unicorn in US history. Wow. And great insight to see what it was to grow from a team of 4 to 1,500 in 3 years. Really, really smart guy. John Hefter is one of the co-founders, and I really love that episode. And lastly, I would say the one that I did with Ryan Tansom from Arcona. They're a fractional CFO solution, but he really talks about sort of the mindset when it comes to, why you would even consider exiting a business and how you would approach that. But most importantly, a lot of people are like, you've got to exit your business. You're going to make the most money you'll make throughout that process. He really talks about really understanding, well, why? If I've got a profitable business and it's continuing to grow and I don't have, platform risk and it's not centralized to Amazon, for example, then why am I rushing to sell it? If I have a lifestyle that is driving, X $1,000 a year and I can live comfortably and it'll continue to grow, then why? The why. So yeah, there's 3 good episodes.
Cool. Thank you very much. Now, what role, if any, does automation play in your operations?
Yeah, automation plays a huge role in
I expect that.
Yeah, in anything. If you want to build anything for scale, then automation has to play a pretty significant role in. I would say it's never a position where you should be scared. Like at the start of any business, humans drive everything. So, getting into a state of automation, you don't have to automate everything at the start. You really need to think through, how can I create efficiencies through it? So to give you some insight, we have an entire data and insights team. And inside of that, we have integrations between our HubSpot CRM to our accounting Xero software to our recruitment applicant tracking system, ATS, where everything is housed and centralized. So as, for example, journeys move from our applicant tracking system, it connects to our HubSpot. So we understand that rather than we have a single source of truth for what's happening, and so it mitigates, misinformation or risk as to where do people sit inside of the funnel. For example, we have analytics dashboards that give us up to the minute insights on business performance, everything from financials all the way through to operational deployment. I would say, the list goes on, but it literally touches every aspect of the business from when you enter our system all the way through to the entire journey. And we also have a whole product team that's building out, I would say, some pretty impressive automations and digital first integration so that our experience happens digitally first. So yeah, if you're trying to build a big business, even when the cost of labor in the Philippines is low, you can never get away from human error. And if someone today is performing the tasks that could be could be automated, then think about what it is for them and how motivated they're going to be to doing very baseline tasks. So always look to automate.
Thank you very much. Now, my last question for today, and it's always the same. Who has taught you the most about e-commerce in your career?
Oof, that is a great question. I don't know if I could put it down to any one individual. Like I remember back in the olden days, back 10 years ago, I used to listen to and do a lot of Ezra Firestone's courses on true e-commerce D2C marketing. There's a lot of learning to be had there. I'd say today there's some super knowledgeable people in the space, particularly inside of the Amazon space. So Brandon Young, who has Seller Systems, fantastic resource. If you're an Amazon seller, he has a community and that guy knows his shit. So yeah, it really depends on where you're at and at what level. I mean, if the question was about business, I could give you probably 15 books off the top of my head, but I'd say that those would be two influential people.
Perfect. We can post them if you want in the blog post for the podcast episode. Thank you so much for your time. It was really a pleasure talking to you. There is so much knowledge that you have about growing a business and about Amazon. I've learned that, especially again back, and we had that several times, planning and having the data in shape is really the key of success. So focusing on what works and not on things that don't work. So if there are products that do not work, why to focus on them? Just focus on the products that work, that help you grow your business, and building a brand around what you're doing is critical to really thrive the business and have success. Yoni, thanks so much. It was really a pleasure.
Thanks for having me.
Companies.
Yeah.
Thanks so much. Bye.
And that's it for this episode of the eCom Ops podcast. If you enjoyed listening and would like us to find and interview more e-commerce operations experts, please search for eCom Ops podcast in your favorite podcast listening app and then subscribe, rate, and review. Until next time.